Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Let's Keep the Conversation Going. We're here today as a community united to raise awareness, share knowledge, and be a voice for children everywhere. Together, we stand for safety, healing, and empowerment of all children and families affected by physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect abuses. My name is Stephanie Miller, Vice President of the Esther Alliance, and I'll be guiding us through today's event. Before we begin, a few reminders to ensure this remains a safe and respectful space for all. Please treat all participants and speakers with kindness. Be mindful that some topics may be sensitive. The audience will remain muted. To participate, just type respectfully in the chat. Refrain from promoting personal business or sharing unrelated links. You're welcome to share from your own experience, but there's no pressure to disclose personal stories. Please avoid naming or identifying others when sharing. Any violations of this policy may result in removal from the session. We are honored to have two dynamic, dedicated women leading today's conversation. Dr. Veronica Neely Morris is the founder and CEO of the Esther Alliance, Incorporated, formerly known as Keep It Simple Saints Ministry. A powerful voice for change, she empowers women and girls through mentorship, education, and advocacy, and supports young women and men pursuing college and trade schools. She's a distinguished author, educator, and entrepreneur, and speaker with a deep commitment to emotional intelligence, healing, and social equity. Marie McKenzie, board member of Esther Alliance, is award-winning #1 best-selling author, international speaker, and a life coach. With over 26 years of experience as an ER nurse and a trained sexual assault nurse examiner, Marie brings her lifelong dedication to health, healing, and empowerment to today's conversation. So let's begin. Let's keep the conversation going. Dr. Veronica Neely Morris.
Good morning. Let's see if I can adjust my Zoom. Stephanie, you want to take yourself down, even though you're beautiful? All right, I'll go ahead and get started. You can see me. So let me just say, welcome everyone. We are truly grateful for your presence and your willingness to listen, learn, and engage in such an important conversation. Your attending today reflects a shared commitment to the well-being of our children and the future of our communities. And for that reason, we again say thank you. Today, we're going to be discussing something of great importance, and that is child abuse prevention and awareness. We are proud as an organization to say that we are deeply committed to this cause. We have personally seen the profound and lasting impact that child abuse has on individuals, families, and entire communities. Awareness is the building block for prevention. Awareness serves as the essential element that supports every effort. When communities are informed, when parents, teachers, preachers, educators, neighbors can identify signs of abuse, we significantly improve our ability to step in before additional harm is done. With knowledge, we are equipped to take action, to extend support, and make sure no child or anyone suffers in silence. To move, the more education we have, the more we educate ourselves, the more we educate others, the fewer opportunities abuse has to continue unnoticed. Abuse thrives in secrecy. When individuals are unaware of the signs or what to look for, victims continue to suffer in silence. With that being said, prevention is one aspect of what we do. The other is healing. Early recognition of abuse is critical for initiating the healing process, and it is a process. Without intervention, children will carry this pain into adulthood, and that will affect their self-esteem, all of their relationships, and their future as a whole. Early detection allows us to provide necessary resources, counseling, and support that every victim deserves. Awareness not only stops abuse, but it also fosters resilience and recovery. Therefore, as the president, as an individual, as a community, we must be proactive. Awareness is not passive. It requires an ongoing effort. Our commitment to awareness and prevention must be reflected in our conversations we have with ourselves, in our conversations we have with our children, the training we provide to teachers, educators, caregivers, and community leaders, and the diligence we uphold in identifying and recognizing the signs of abuse. This organization is committed to representing the voiceless. We will continue educating, advocating, and supporting, but we need the collective efforts of each and every one of you to move this mission forward. So let us all commit today to be champions of awareness. Let us open our eyes, open our ears, and most importantly, open our hearts. Because every child, every individual deserves to be safe, loved, and free from harm. Again, thank you. I'm Dr. Veronica Neely Morris, and I am the president.
Thank you, Veronica. I am Marie. Did you know, according to the World Health Organization, up to 1 billion children aged 2 to 17 experienced physical, sexual, and emotional violence and neglect in the past year? That is 1 in 2 children globally. In the United States alone, the Children's Bureau 2023 Child Maltreatment Report revealed that an estimated 600,000 children experienced abuse and neglect. Unfortunately, about 1,900 of them died. What is most tragic about this? These numbers only represent reported cases. Many, many more children suffer in silence, unseen, and unheard. That's why we are here today. So let's keep the conversation going. Without further ado, let's hear from the next speaker. Sab, you have the mic.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Sab, and I am here to share a little bit about my story, as well as what I do to proactively prevent and support children who have gone through child abuse. So I am first and foremost a survivor of childhood abuse. My perpetrator was my father, and I experienced abuse from him for 2 years until he eventually left my mum, and we were safer, happier, but still unfortunately going through the impact. So he was a man who kind of ended up with my mom because people felt that she just needed to be married after she'd been divorced. So it was quite pushed on her. I would describe it as a forced marriage. Back then, it probably wasn't recognized as such. But he became very abusive quite quickly towards her. And then when I was born, towards me, there was a lot of alcohol and substance abuse kind of within the situation. And I experienced a lot of physical harm, unfortunately. he only stayed till I was about a toddler. So I don't remember a lot of it, thankfully. But from what I do know is from documentation that was kept because of family court. And I can say that was very difficult to read and process. Um, but also kind of a bit of an opportunity for me to understand why I felt the way I did. So I did have quite low self-esteem. I had triggers I didn't recognize growing up. Kind of going back to what Dr. Veronica said, that you carry it until adulthood. And I definitely found that was the case for myself. My teenage years, my dad kind of tried to enter back into our family, saying he now had the duty to marry off me and my younger sister. She was 13, I was 15 at the time. Thankfully, my mom is a very strong-headed woman and was not having any of it, and told him where the door was. Um, we were lucky enough to get legal kind of action in place and protection orders just to kind of make sure we were safe and not taken out of the country. And that kept things settled for a while, thankfully. And then I guess, a lot of what happened for me and seeing what happened with people within my family led to me and my profession. So when I was 18, I decided to join a rape crisis centre. I think the best decision I ever made. I was able to not just support people who'd gone through it, but I was able to give them the messaging they should have had when they first disclosed it. I was able to tell them I believed them. I was able to tell them it's not their fault what they went through. And I was able to provide a safe space for them to just share whatever they felt comfortable sharing. And that, I think, for me, kind of showed me what my calling was. And I definitely would say over the last 10 years of working with survivors of abuse, I'm definitely in the right place. And I've been able to have the opportunity to actually do work where I have supported survivors through the healing process, but I have also been able to do a lot of prevention work. Um, so I had many opportunities within this rape crisis centre where I was employed to do work within schools, universities, colleges, children homes, and youth clubs, because as we know, it's so important to have adequate support in place to support people who've gone through this. We definitely need to also put as much energy and resources in to try and stop this from ever happening to somebody. Prevention is always better than cure, and that's something I truly do believe. So I did a lot of work with students, and I was lucky enough to actually be part of an initiative where we worked with children as young as 5. Um, and it sounds a bit crazy saying, oh, we speak to young children as young as 5 about prevention of abuse, but it's because they are very much likely, unfortunately, to be victims of it. And if we don't start as young as that, we will then unfortunately be having to support them through healing things that we could have prevented if we gave them the right messaging at the beginning. So I definitely think, you start as early as you can, obviously appropriately based on what their age is. But that conversation definitely needs to be had, and not just in schools, more so in our homes, which I think is something quite difficult for parents to do if they don't know how to do it. And hopefully that throughout today, parents, you'll be able to take away some of the things that we share and implement them within your home, because as much as school is important, our children's school is their first school is home. And we're their first teachers, and we need to be able to provide that safe space, but we also need to be able to teach them that we're the safe adults that they can come to if something doesn't feel so right. So I spent kind of, I guess, the last 8 years working within sexual violence industries and domestic violence industries, doing what I could, where I could, with the resources we had available. Um, I ended up stepping away for a while for personal reasons. Um, and then I went back into doing this work, but I decided to do it solo. So I currently now have my own organization called SAB Against Abuse, and that is specifically tailored towards professionals. And the reason I do that is because when I did my work within the voluntary sectors, as an ethnic minority woman, I tried very hard to have the voices of ethnic minority survivors heard. And unfortunately, on the top, it wasn't sometimes wasn't heard and sometimes actions weren't taken because it just didn't kind of fit the narrative that they were trying to kind of fulfill at the time. So I thought, well, let me take my experiences, my knowledge, my expertise, and let me actually make a difference for my communities and the people who look like me, who are unfortunately suffering silence because professionals don't understand what they're going through, don't know what they need, and don't really know how to support them. So that's what I do now. I support professionals, train professionals to be able to understand abuse within ethnic minority communities, but also how to better support ethnic minority survivors so they're not having to continue living in this world of silence and shame and blame, and how professionals can actually support them through the healing journey without them having to compromise their identity and their values as women from those communities. Um, Something I just want to kind of end on really is a bit of a personal note. Um, Being a survivor of childhood abuse is very strange for me to say because I don't remember a lot of it. And sometimes I feel that I can't put myself with the people who fall into that group. Um, but actually understanding it a lot more and knowing that the impacts do live with you. I found a few years ago that I definitely do fall within that community of a survivor and I have a right to call myself a survivor because I have experienced, unfortunately, huge amounts of harassment online from my father's new families. Um, and even though I've never met these people, I've never really seen my dad ever again, I really don't have anything to do with these people. Unfortunately, just having some kind of connection to him um, still keeps me at risk and unfortunately still keeps me part of the group of people where the abuse stays with you, even if you've done your own healing. There's things you can't control, and sometimes that is other people's behavior. Um, that's the reason you don't see my face today as a safety, unfortunately, because that's something we do need to continue to consider as survivors. Um, and just to kind of bear in mind, I guess, is when you do have a survivor in front of you, regardless of how long ago they might have experienced something, there's still things going on for them. Healing is a journey that I don't believe ever ends. It's something we have to continue doing. And I think just be very mindful of the person who sits in front of you. The stats Maria shared, these numbers are people, and you are very, very likely to have people who are survivors of abuse who may never actually ever share that. So when you do talk about abuse, be mindful of the person sitting in front of you. Think of them as someone who may be a survivor, or definitely someone who has someone close to them as a survivor, and keep these conversations non-judgmental and supportive, and just make it a safe space, because if we don't make our spaces safe, we're not going to be able to tackle this unfortunate issue that is a global issue. And that's kind of what I want to leave everything on today. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my story.
Thank you so much, Sab. We appreciate your sharing and a very powerful testimony. And we congratulate you on the work you're doing to help others to heal, thrive, and survive. Without further ado, our next speaker is Salsa Ray. Thank you, Salsa Ray, for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. So my name is Sosre. I'm also a survivor. I survived being abused by my father when I was little. I'd like to share a piece of a story I wrote with Marie in an anthology called From Stuck to Limitless. So I'm not as vocal as the others here. So for me, this is how I'm going to share a bit of my story. So back then there was really a stigma surrounding sexual abuse. That was in the 80s and the 90s. Everything stayed covered up because, as usual, my family never shared their business with outsiders. My mom did the best she could to shelter me from him when he came to visit because I also had other brothers. And yeah, in my teens, I spent most of my free time at my grandma's house, often sleeping there during the week also. The times I spent at my sanctuary, as I used to call it, were the best. I made some friends and played outside to keep my mind busy until it was nighttime and the bad dreams began. Not knowing how to deal with my emotions, I grew more depressed and tried to take my life with pills. I still, I'm sorry. That's why I'm not very vocal.
It's okay. It's okay. You're okay. You're safe here. It's okay. Take a deep breath. Yes. You're safe now.
Yes, the times I spent at my sanctuary, as I used to call it, were the best. I made some friends and played outside to keep my mind busy. So, not knowing how to deal with my emotions, I grew more depressed and tried to take my life. I still don't know how I got so lucky, but for God's grace, I'm still here. When my first suicide attempt didn't work, I became bitter and often engaged in fights in school. I found so much at that time. I fought so much at that time because I was trying to feel anything other than the pain in my heart. Don't get me wrong, I was not a bully, but I never backed down from a fight also. I attended a co-ed school, so I would sometimes even fight boys. I remember this one time when I hit a guy so hard, he fell to the floor unconscious after he gave me a black eye. Another incident that scared me straight was when I smashed a guy's head through the window of a shop. It'd been bugging me, and I didn't like people in my space. It sometimes still bothers me from time to time, but I'm working on that to allow more people in my space. It took a long time to, let my husband in my private space because I had to work on that also. But now, for that is cool. So, yes, growing up, I didn't like wearing dresses because my body had filled out at an early age. I always tried to ignore stares from boys and men who I thought was older than I would thought that I was older than I really was. Everything was going great in my life except for when he came back and try to I don't sorry. Hold on. I just need a quick break.
Yeah. So while we're waiting for Sorcery, we all have a role to play in protecting children. This means being informed, staying alert to the signs of abuse, and advocating for the children, advocating for safe systems that support safe, nurturing environment for every child. And as parents, keep an open line of communication with our children, telling them, as Sab said earlier, what's appropriate touch, what is appropriate for an adult to say or do where you're concerned. Let the child know it's safe to come and speak with you. So you have to be able to keep an open line of communicating with your children. There are parents where their children are so even afraid to approach them with anything. After school, how was your day? Keep the dialogue. Let them be comfortable sharing things with you. If they're not sharing it with you, they're going to be sharing it with someone outside and getting advice from others, and it may not be the right advice. And then even though there are a lot of cases where perpetrators are parents, we need to let children know they are safe adults. Okay, Sorcery is back. Go ahead, Sorcery.
So yeah, I'm back. Thank you. Yeah. So I would like to end. I know it's not the full 50 minutes, but maybe I'll get a chance to talk later again. But I just wanted to let you know that now I dedicate myself to assisting others to straighten their crowns, remind them then that there are better days to come, and I try to help others who are stuck in a cycle of abuse, be it sexually, emotionally, or physically. It is something I will never stop doing. They deserve to be free just as I am. So that's all for me now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sorcery. And we're so sorry for what you went through. So happy that your healing journey is on the way. I know you have a very supportive husband and family, and to communicate that our community is here for you. So thank you so much for sharing. And back to you, Stephanie.
Hi. Dr. Veronica Neely Morris is going to introduce the next guest.
All right, can you guys hear me? Yes, I'm not sure where I went, but can you hear my voice? Yes?
Yes, and you're still on the screen.
All right, thank you. Let me just say to Sorcery, I love the tears. Never apologize for your tears. Those are your emotions, your processing, and I cry all the time. Tears is not a sign of weakness. So anytime you want to share, because this is very difficult, hearing your story, I can still feel what you've gone through. So never apologize for crying. I love crying. That is a tool that God gave us and that we can use it at will. There is no shame in tears. I love tears. With that being said, what I wanted to do is introduce, bring in a different perspective. This is something that we have not done in the past. I wanted to hear the perspective from a pastor or pastors from the church, because my experience was I didn't necessarily tell anybody what I was going through the church, but I know other friends and individuals that did go to the pastor and tell the pastor what was going on in their life. And for the most part, not every church, but what I've experienced and I've heard, most pastors would basically tell them to read scriptures, be at the church every time the door is open, plant a deliverance seed, and all that is good and well. But I think we need more than learning a scripture, because I knew the Bible, but I did not know how to fully utilize the Bible because I had so much else going on. So I wanted to bring in these amazing pastors who they're going to introduce themselves and kind of tell what their church is, their ministry. And I just want to hear their perspective on how they are counseling individuals when they come in through their ministry. Without further ado, I hope I don't butcher the name. I think it's Wiley. I'm going to go ahead and you guys go ahead and come on the screen.
Good morning, good afternoon to all. I am Bishop Stan Wiley. This is my wife, Tia. We pastor a church by the name of Project Church in a little small town just outside of Fort Myers called Lehigh Acres. We are currently in the process of opening a youth center that will focus more on building personal relationships with young people as they go through the healing process of abuse. This all started a couple years ago when our ministry was first being birthed. We were using a community room at the local youth center, or community park rather. And we noticed that every Sunday after we got done with services, there would be like this group of kids that would be like hanging out. They be out there smoking, drinking, listening to music, things that teenagers do. So we started dedicating one Sunday a month to just spending time with those kids. And what we realized as we built relationship with those kids were that a lot of those kids were either in foster care or being neglected by their parents due to whatever the situation was. And we realized that the church has to do more than just preach the word. We talk about family, we talk about the need for developing, loving relationships. And we realize that a part of the healing process for people that have gone through situations, we realize that part of the healing process for them is understanding what real family looks like, what real love feels like. So that's something that we've been working on. We've started a mentoring program called Misfits Mentoring. Misfits standing for my identity says freedom. I'm transformed, saved. So we're looking for those kids that feel like they are unloved. They feel like they're unwanted. They've gone through experiences that no child should go through. And we're walking them through the process of healing. We're not just giving them scripture or telling them that, God loves you. We're actually exemplifying that for them so that they can see firsthand what real love is. Even as adults, we talk about love and we say that we love, but do we really understand what real love is? And without having a real example of love, we may grow up, because I've met quite a few individuals that have grown up thinking that love was abusive, or that love was angry, or that love was violent, because the only examples of love that they ever received were abusive, angry, and violent. So our whole mission, our whole goal is to show the youth that have gone through rough situations that love is not angry, love is not abusive, love is not dictatorial, but love is truly sacrificial. And we sacrifice each week, each day for the young people in our community.
Hello, everybody. I'm Pastor Tia, and I'm actually a survivor myself of sexual abuse from multiple family members. And so for me, the situation is I love that it's being brought to the light more, because I think I heard Dr. Veronica say, or someone says, that abuse thrives in the darkness. And I remember so vividly my abusers telling me, like, if you tell your mother or if you tell someone, that you're going to get in trouble. And so for me, I always felt like I was a person who was in the wrong, even though I knew that what was going on wasn't right. And so with that being said, it's like my heart goes out to every child, not just child, because I think I heard Saab says, like, that healing process, it's a journey. You continue to heal literally every single day. You make that decision to be okay. Some days it may not be okay. Some days are harder than others, but you make the decision to be, to be better than the day before. So with that being said, my heart is for every child out there. And from the pastoral point of view, I think it's kind of, I'm going to use this word loosely. You're in a tough position being a pastor, simply because pastors in the state of Florida, you're not really I'm sorry, you are a mandated reporter. However, under the auspice of being a pastor to parishioner, you have pastor parishioner privacy as well. So anything that's told to you in confession, in short, we are not supposed to just go and just, hey, this was said to me and this is what's happening. So with that being said, you're kind of put on that line there as a pastor, as I heard Dr. Veronica say. it's easy to just tell someone, go pray about it, go to the altar, whatever the case is, and God will fix it. But I'm a firm believer that God uses the hands of man, women, right, to help deliver and rescue and bring hope to those who are in those dark places. So, again, as a pastor, that's one of the things,
Challenges.
the challenges, right, that you face from the pastoral aspect. You have to have discernment in that. I believe it is twofold. You have to walk, in the spirit and hear God, but you also have discernment in the natural and know the cues. You have to be able to observe what's happening in your flock, right? And so, with that being said, we just have to. I think pastors need to talk more about this. That this needs to be discussed more in the religious arena, because it's not just go pray, do 3 Hail Marys, and everything's going to get better, because at the end of the day, that child, that adult, whoever it may be, they're going back into that household and things aren't changing. So we have to be the catalyst for change. And I think being a pastor or being in this pastoral position, it's an excellent place, because as pastors, we're sometimes the first stop that people make to tell, hey, whether it's the perpetrator or whether it's the victim, you get both of them who sit before you at your desk to tell you, hey, I've done this thing, because they feel maybe guilty or they feel bad about it. So they're coming to talk to you about it. And then what do you do at that point? That is the question, right? That's the hard part. So I'll leave it right there, because I know we'll be more in conversation. But just as a pastor, being in a pastoral position, it is a challenging position, but it's one that you have to take with wisdom, and you have to definitely hear from God on how to handle the situation. Because again, if someone brings a situation to you and you mishandle that situation, you literally can put that person's life in jeopardy because of the position that you now have and the information that you hold.
Wow, well said. I'm going to ask everybody to unmute themselves. We're going to do like a round table where we're just having a free flow conversation. Let me just say this, pastors. I was not aware of the position that you guys are in. So I'm so glad that we brought you on today, because it makes more sense. We are, as a professional respiratory therapist and the other things that I do, we are mandatory reporters. However, like you said, you're in a difficult situation because you're hearing this, and as a minister, you are obligated to, quote unquote, when they come and do confession, not to say anything. And I just never seen it from that perspective. So again, thank you for sharing that. But I would also like to add that even from the pastor's perspective, I am sure you are encouraging the individual to perhaps seek professional help other
Oh,
than
absolutely.
from the church, because there's a legality thing. And yes, we are Christian, we do love the Lord, but we don't want to go to jail for them, right?
All
And
right.
we want to make sure that we adhere to the law of the land.
Yes.
So thank you so much for that. What I'm going to do, if you look at the squares, I'm going to have, after I read off these statistics, I'm going to have Marie start a conversation. Then we're going to go back to the pastors. Then we're going to go to Sasha Ray. I had to look how to spell your name. Sasha, pronounce your name. Then Stephanie, and then Saba. So everybody unmute your mic. I just wanted to read something. When we talk about child abuse, a lot of people think we can just get through it or get over it. I remember on numerous occasions, people that loved me or said they loved me just wanted to know, why don't I just get over it? And that is such a frustrating comment, because it's like, and I don't curse, so I'm gonna pretend like I'm cussing. MF, I want to get over it. I want to get over it. This is the craziest thing to tell me to get over. I want to get over it. And like I said on a show, I think last week, I don't have these same struggles every day, but I still have triggers. I would say at least once a week, I still have that same dream, and I'm 58 years old, where my dad is trying to get me. And every day, when I have those dreams, I wake up profuse in sweat, and thanking God that it was only a dream. I still have those dreams today. My husband and I was watching a movie on Lifetime. I had to leave the room because one of the scenes were this guy was molesting a child. I still can't see that stuff. I don't try to prevent my husband from watching what he's watching, but he knows me. I've shared my story with him. I'm open with him that there are certain things I still cannot watch. It destroys me. Do I still see myself as a victim? No, because for me, a victim is a person that's just getting by, just surviving it, just making it. I was once upon a victim, but now I am a overcomer. So I wanted to read these statistics. When we see people that are on drugs um, being incarcerated, there are studies out there that shows that a large percentage of these individuals, all of this stuff and these bad decisions are stemmed from their childhood abuse. So we, like I think it was Saba who said that we have to be sensitive and being consciously aware of what we say around anyone, because you don't know whether that person been abused or not. So we cannot judge. We're all about healing for individuals who believe and want to be helped. Marie?
They said about statistics in 1995 to 1997. The CDC partnered with Kaiser Permanente, and they did a study which is called the ACE study, which is acute childhood experiences. They interviewed about 17,000 adults wanting to know how childhood abuse affects the mental health and overall well-being of adults. And childhood abuse like sexual abuse, physical abuse, parent on drug, neglect. And they found that at least 1/3 had one ACE, and more has like 3 or 4 ACEs. And the more you have, the more it affects your overall well-being. So illnesses like high blood pressure, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, heart issues, mental health issues, STDs, early pregnancies, drug and alcohol abuse. So what the children experience carries over into adulthood, and that research has borne that out. Additionally, perpetrators, 80 to 95% of survivors know they're perpetrators. There are parents, they're in the church, they're in the schools, they are the neighbors. So when we're communicating to our children about safe spaces and safe adults, be careful and, keep the line of communication going and letting them know they are safe adults. If the perpetrator is a parent, they need to go to somebody else, whether it be school, whether it be the church, and if one person doesn't believe, just keep going. Don't give up. There is someone out there, and we need to join our voices. This is our problem. That's not just their problem, it's our problem. And as a community and as a society, we need to get educated, get enraged, and get engaged.
Absolutely. It's interesting because as we've been, so one of our main focuses is dealing with people that have never experienced the church. So we do a lot of outreach ministry. We do a lot of street ministry, in an attempt to reach people that have never experienced Christ for themselves. In that process, we've realized that a lot of people, the challenge for spiritual healing is dealing with what we've come to call like root issues. And in most instances, root issues are the sexual abuse, the mental abuse, the physical abuse that they've experienced throughout their childhood. Now, I didn't really experience any physical abuse as a child, but there was a lot of mental abuse that I dealt with as a child. And it wasn't so much that my mother was abusive. It was more so the fact that she just didn't know how to deal with kids. So because of that, I kind of grew up with a chip on my shoulder. I left my mom's house at 14. I quickly turned to the streets, and that became my life. And I never really thought about what my life was like as a child until I became an adult. And I didn't really realize how much my behavior was rooted in the neglect or the abuse that I felt as a child, you know, until I got older, until I actually got in the face of God and started to develop my relationship, my personal relationship with God. It was then that I realized that my alcohol abuse, my drug abuse, my obsessive behavior, it all stemmed from the fact that, I felt like my mom just didn't love me. So now as I deal with other kids, I can see traits within them of me. I can see how, kids in foster care feel like they just don't have anybody because of the fact that they feel like they've been abandoned. I can understand now while when I visit DJJ why some of the juveniles that are incarcerated have the anger and the hatred that they have in their hearts. It literally stems from the feeling of abandonment or the abuse or the things that they went through as a younger child. So this forum only gives more necessity to the work that we're doing because it only gives us a greater understanding of some of the things that the kids are going through. When we meet kids that are cutting themselves and kids that are promiscuous and kids that are dealing with drug abuse and substance abuse, like we understand now what the root is. And we understand that the most important thing for us is building relationship with those kids so that they feel the freedom to vent, to feel like we're a safe space for them to let go. Because for most people, they never are able to deal with the root of their issue, the abuse, the abandonment, whatever it may be. They're never able to deal with that because they're never able to find a safe space to deal with it. So our whole focus and mission is to become that safe space, not just for children, but for men and women, because we understand that even with adults, that lack of freedom to express what has happened, their root issues, transition into adult behaviors. And we can sit back and list off all of the negatives, but how often do we actually address some of the more positive things that and I use air quotes when I say that, because we have some adults out there that are obsessive with work. They're obsessive with their lifestyle, and they're obsessive with the things that they do simply because they want to prove someone in their past wrong. That person that said that they were being sexually molested or sexually abused or abused because of the fact that they were weak, they want to show that they're strong. So they're obsessive in their actions as adults just to prove their past wrong. And they never get a chance to really express that because of the fact that their whole mindset is that nobody's going to know my dirty little secret.
Let me just jump in right quick and say, sir, you've said so many powerful things that are so right, so on point. I almost lost the relationship with my daughter because she didn't think I loved her. And
Mhm.
as your parent, and as me being a parent, I'm sure as my parent, at least one of them, didn't have the skill set to love or to show that love. They're survivors. You know, they even like raising my child. I never connected to my child until she was about 5 years old because I was still living in survival mode. I wasn't equipped to be a mother, but I did what grown people did and I got pregnant. But it wasn't that I didn't love her. It was just I had just enough energy to make it through the day.
Absolutely.
So we've had many conversations and we actually did a show together and she was crying and I was crying, but I almost lost that relationship, not because I didn't love her dearly. I didn't have what it took to express that love because I didn't receive it. So we don't blame our parents because we don't know all of our parents' story.
Correct.
The purpose of this is to bring awareness and start the healing process.
Correct. Correct.
So let's tap on that. Can forgiveness be part of the healing process, even when justice or accountability has never came? That's open to anybody.
Can you repeat that?
Can forgiveness be part of the healing process, even when justice or accountability never came?
Absolutely. I think it. I think it absolutely can. You know, I when I look back on my situation, for my dad was dealing with addiction, so he was in and out of our lives. He was just never there. And for a long time, I had a hatred for my dad because of the fact that he was not there. And what I realized when I matured was that part of the reason why he was there was because he was battling demons that nobody saw. His addiction, his alcoholism, running from his past. Like he had a lot that he was dealing with. And because of that, that took him out of our lives. But what I understood is I understood that I had to forgive him in order to be the father that I needed to be for my children. I have 4 boys and a daughter. And had I held on to the anger and the hatred that I had for him, I literally would have passed that anger and hatred on to my boys. That literally would have become a generational hatred that would have continued progressively into the future of my children, and I did not want that. So even though he's still battling his problems, his issues, I had to forgive him for me. And I know this may sound harsh and it may sound difficult, but even when you're dealing with sexual or physical abuse, if nothing else, you have to forgive them for you because you have to heal. Regardless of what was said to them, regardless of what was told to them, regardless of how they feel, you have to forgive them for you because you can't move on until you forgive them.
Absolutely. And I'll just chime in a little bit right there. That portion is so important. You have to forgive them for you because it's at that point when you're able to release that person, then your healing can start because you play it over and over in your head. You play the events over and over. You ask yourself, what could I have done different? You ask yourself, well, what if I would have said something? It's like all these things, they haunt you, but it's like when you release that person, you release, you know that it happened and the emotions are still there. But I always like to say more the sting that comes along. It's like you have taken away their power or the control over you. And that was for me when I got older and I was able to actually talk about these things and I was able to hear myself verbalize it and I no longer had to hold it inside. Like I was in there with the perpetrator by myself like every day until I was able to release that thing. And it's like the first time that I was able to talk about it publicly, it was like the bowels broke. I cried, and it was just like, oh man, but it was a release. And that gave me such strength to be able to say, oh man, I can do this again. And I think I heard her say, get angry, get mad about it, but talk about it. Because it's like the more I talked about it, the more freedom that came to me, because now you can't hurt me. Like you don't have that. Like, and some of the perpetrators are dead and gone, but in our lives they're still alive because we're just steady replaying like what happened. We're holding on to them. We literally lock ourselves in a cell with them and just replay the actions. For some of us, that has what happened in our childhood, we've taken that over in our marriage. And if I can say, like, some of us are sexualized, and even as a pastor I can say this, in counseling, a lot of times what happened to us as children or in our youth, it impacts our sexual lives with our husbands or our wives, because we literally are replaying this thing. I mean, I don't know how far we can go, but saying, like, as adults, when we're doing adult time, right? When you aren't fully, when you haven't been released from that situation, it's hard for you to release yourself fully to your mate, because in your mind you're still held captive by your abuser, right? And that's a lot of us with the sexual abuse who have been through those things. So I can say that, like, that's part of my testimony. Like, it's a thing that you have to, being a Christian, for me, you have to go to God, and God is able to bring healing to your heart. He's able, yes, when you forgive, that is literally the key that unlocks the healing. It's when you are able to forgive that person. And that in itself can be a journey, because sometimes we feel justified in our anger towards those people. You hurt me. You did something to me, right? And I feel justified in that. But when you allow God to, when you release that thing to God and you're able to walk in forgiveness of that person that hurt you, then you will start to see yourself walk out of that prison as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to say this, and then I want Sasha Ray to make a comment. You're absolutely right, Pastor. You're in a new marriage, and all of a sudden you guys are doing grown folk stuff, and he's like, call me daddy. That shuts down the whole sexual enjoyment, because it's a trigger. It also affects your ability to connect with God, because when you're in church and saying, Father, I just thank you, I love you, I want. When I heard the word Father, there was nothing lovely and sovereign about that. So it took me many years to disassociate my natural father with my spiritual father. And no matter how much counseling I've had, I needed my spiritual component to help me cross the bridge, because this healing is a holistic process. And when I say a holistic process, it is involved your spiritual man, whoever your higher power is. Mine just happened to be God, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. I needed to change the way that I ate, the people I hung around, what I listened to. It is a holistic process. So everything you said was true. Again, this is about awareness, noticing the signs, and then making that very difficult, hard decision on what to do next, because it is still hard to report, especially when it's a family member.
Absolutely.
Sasha Ray, you have any comments, or you want to share anything?
Yes, I wanted to talk about forgiveness also. My father died in 2008 from lung cancer. He was also an addict and an alcoholic, and I learned stuff about his past also. So it was a generational curse with him. He'd been abused as a child as well, but instead of finding his demons and making sure that his children don't go through that, he did the same to me. So when I learned that, I saw him, differently, but I didn't want anything to do with him until about a week before his passing. He called me. I didn't want to speak to him, but my brothers, they pressured me a bit. So after praying on it for a few days, I decided to talk to him and forgive him, because I didn't believe in that forgiveness was for me. I thought it was for the other person, but I talked to God about it, and I granted my father his last wish and forgave him for giving me such a bad start in life. In a strange way, I have him to thank for the strong woman that I am today, because I fought the beast and came out victorious in Jesus' name. And luckily,
Amen.
I have not grown into the bitter woman I was so scared to become. I still have the demons that pop in my head occasionally, especially when I talk about it. I have to learn how to vocalize myself without breaking down and crying every time. But that's a process I'm working on. And Marie was the one who encouraged me to write a chapter of my a story of my life, and it's called "Growing Up Broken," and that's how I grew up. And I think about writing another book, and that's about raising children while growing up broken. Because I have three boys, and it was the most beautiful thing in my life, but also the most hard thing I have to do in my life. Because on days when I'm not 100%, I'm afraid that I cannot give them 100%. And yeah, maybe I cheated them out of some things in life because I haven't been always yeah, as strong as I am today. Let me say that. So I'll keep working on that. And also, I would like to share some tips with people about helping your child when they are sexually abused. Because as a parent, you have an important role in helping your child recover from sexual abuse. There are ways to help your child and yourself through this difficult experience. Your role in helping your child recover is crucial. They will need your ongoing support, belief, and protection. It would be helpful if you try to spend time with your child as much as you can, accept that your child may be acting differently, and respect your child's wishes and be sensitive to their emotional needs. That for me, their respect their emotional needs means that they don't have to be in the vicinity of the one that abused them. So yeah, with me, I still had to see my father from time to time, even though they kicked him out of the house. But like I said, I had brothers and they didn't know about anything. Like everything was put under the rug. And I don't blame my mother for that. That's just how things were at that time. But it would have helped a lot if I was taken for therapy or stuff like that. And then yeah, maybe it would be different. So I tried to do things differently. But again, I don't blame my mom for nothing. And it's just a cycle that needed to be broken. And I'm luckily that I could have broken it. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Sal, how does cultural expectations help a survivor try to explain their story? Well, I know, like with your culture, where women are not as held as equal as to men, how are women able to express their what they're going through?
I think the honest truth is that in many cultures, abuse is so normal. You know, the things that so many women have to put up with in relationships are considered to just be, this is just how things are. And if it's something is so normalized and something is just, this is how it is, how do we ever expect these women to come forward? Because they don't know otherwise. I think someone said earlier about if this is something that you're kind of raised into as this is just how things are, we're not going to speak up and say that this feels wrong or this is different, or we're not going to challenge these ideas because, well, why would we? You know, it's just part of our society, it's just part of our communities. I think culture definitely plays a big part of that. The culture I'm from is the Pakistani culture, which is very similar to kind of South Asian and some African cultures, that the concept is family honor, family reputation is the forefront of everything, you know, individual needs take a back seat. And as long as you're making your parents look good, your wider family look good, your community look good, whatever demons you're fighting with, you just have to put that behind. You've got to put it under the carpet. You've got to keep it very quiet, keep it a secret, because we don't want anything to taint this honor, this reputation that we're, you know, that we're good people, or where we're quite high in terms of status and things like that. And I think it goes back to us having these conversations. So a big part of the work I used to do was actually go into communities where women were from ethnic minority backgrounds. And I used to sit down and have these conversations, and they'd look at me like I was swearing at them. Like I'd talk about, I'd say the word sex, and they'd be like, "Oh, what did you say?" And it's because even just talking about a healthy sexual relationship isn't normal. So then talking about things like abuse and trauma, that is a whole different ball game. It's an alien topic to them. And unfortunately, we have to make people uncomfortable to make change happen. Um, and it does start with education and awareness and conversations. And they need to be the conversations we have at the table with our kids and our family. And sometimes it also needs to be challenging people within our families who say inappropriate things. I know I'm also, me and my sister-in-law sometimes are having to kind of be the outcast at the dinner table when we're fighting like the male members in the family and say, well, that wasn't very appropriate, or don't make these jokes, or don't say things like that about women on the screen, because for them it's very normal and it's okay behavior. And if we allow it to continue to be seen as okay, well, then the younger children, our generation, our families are going to see it as the norm, and then nothing's ever going to change. So we do need some of those vocal voices who do stick up and say, don't say that about women. Don't treat women like that. Don't comment on women's dress or their behavior. It's nothing to do with you. And eventually, hopefully, there'll be this ripple effect where we do make a bit of a difference. And if it isn't worldwide, at least we make that difference within our own homes. And as Celestia said, we could potentially be the ones who break that chain within our families. We stop that generational trauma. So if we just do that, we're making a difference to some children's lives, the ones within our generation, within our families. And that I think is powerful enough, and it's impactful enough for us to really make noise about. So I think just keep making that noise in the right places at the right times, and just don't be afraid to use our voices.
If I may, um, so when we talk about culture, and Miss Saul brought up something that really kind of made me want to say something. Even when we talk about genders, um, for men, it's even more difficult to talk about sexual abuse. Um, as men, we have these mindsets, these thoughts that as a man, I have to protect my manhood. We have this we have this social construct of what a man is supposed to be. Culturally, we have this ideology of what a man is supposed to be. So when it comes to sexual abuse, or any kind of abuse for that matter, it becomes very difficult for men. Men become angry and violent because of the examples of physical abuse that they've experienced. Some men become tentative because of sexual abuse that they may have experienced. Other men may become more violent and lean heavier on drugs and alcohol and things of this nature. But from a cultural perspective, it becomes very difficult for men to even acknowledge the root of their. So the way I've always dealt with it is that we have root issues. Those root issues produce trees in our lives. Those trees produce fruit in our lives. So when we start dealing with the alcoholism, when we start dealing with the obsessive behavior, when we start dealing with the drug addiction and all of those other things, those literally are fruit that have been produced in the trees of our lives that literally are grown, blossomed, rooted and the abuse and the neglect and the abandonment and the all of the things that we don't want to talk about. So culturally, when we look at the things that we do, how even we interact with certain situations and certain people, like it's difficult for men just to express what they've been through based on what the culture or what society says a man's role is supposed to be.
Absolutely. Oftentimes we're treating the fruit when what needs to be treated is the root causes. Marie,
Correct.
you deal with any men that come through the emergency room or sexual rape kit. Your specialty, do you deal with any men? And if so, can you share your input on that?
Yes, I've had male survivors. My one I remember clearly was in his 30s, and he did not want to report to the police at all. He was also a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and he had gone to this party and was assaulted. And the one thing he said that stood out to me to this day, the perpetrator just came up to him and held his hand and led him into the room. And it brought him back to when he was a child and his uncle used to molest him. He would just come and he would just walk. So he was just walking with this perpetrator, just like he did when his uncle was molesting him as a child. It's more difficult. I've learned through research and talking to male survivors. They don't want to report. They don't want to go public unless they, he came to the hospital because he want medications, prophylaxis for STDs. They, as Pastor said, their masculinity is now being threatened. Why didn't I fight him off? Am I going to be gay now? They're asking themselves. If they had no inkling of sexual orientation, is this going to make me gay? How do I talk to my wife? Because sometimes the survivor is also married. It's not just their raping children, it's adult, male or female. So, and there are more male survivors than you would believe. And also, there are perpetrators who are female. There are perpetrators who are female. But the male survivors that I've had, it's more difficult for them to disclose. And, we must be very sensitive when we are in the position to counsel them or treat them, let them know you believe them. We start by believing, be emotional support, encouraging them to seek therapy because they're more likely to not go to therapy because they don't want to be known as a survivor. So, yeah.
This question goes back to the pastor, and this is based on something, Marie, you brought up, and I know this is a hot topic, but it still has to do with child abuse prevention and awareness. From my own story, from being abused 2 or 3 times a week from the age of 5 up until the age of 14. What if, because of the abuse, I decided that I no longer like men? That is not the case. That is not the case. That is not the case. I will repeat. I had a lot of problems, but that was not one of them. How do you counsel people? Like I have friends that are either bisexual or they're gay because of childhood issues. Can these people truly have a heart for God and love the Lord and still struggle in that lifestyle? My belief is absolutely yes, they can. How do you counsel somebody on that, pastors, and what's your perspective on that?
So that's a really good question. I believe that when it comes to that particular situation, I believe getting to the root is the first step. I've heard a lot of people say, that they were born gay or that it's just something that they knew. A lot of those same individuals, when we probe deep enough, we find that they dealt with sexual abuse. So, in the dealing with sexual abuse, now once we address the root, now we can start dealing with the fruit. We can't destroy the tree without first destroying the root. So, the first thing that we do is start dealing with the root issues. Was there any kind of sexual abuse? If there was sexual abuse, now as an adult, how are you dealing with it? What are you doing about it? Um, if now you want to learn to love, you want to learn real relationship, now that we've dealt with the root, now our focus is on the vertical relationship that that individual has with God. What does your vertical relationship look like? What does your relationship with God look like? Are you spending time to get to know who you are based on what God has said about you? Not what man has said, not what your abuser has said, not even what your parents have said, but spending time to get to know who God says you are. And when you spend time to know who God says you are, that opens up a whole new world. Because no longer are we confined by the you're nothing, you're nobody, nobody cares about you, whatever the language the abuser has used, no longer are you held captive by that. But now there's a freedom that comes with knowing that you're loved by God, knowing that you are joint heirs with Jesus Christ, knowing that you are you're a child of a king who loves you so much that he's willing to give everything, that he has given everything for you. That changes literally your whole perspective of who you have seen yourself as. Because in the past, you've only seen yourself as that individual based on what everybody else has had to say about you. So, the first step is dealing with the root. The second step is examining the fruit. The third step is focusing on the vertical relationship with God.
If I can chime in there, I heard one of the young ladies say, it may have been Sob, I think I heard her say that she didn't remember, like when she was younger. I'm going to take it back even farther because a lot of sexual abuse happens as children. We go through these phases and we try to suppress the thought of what happened. And sometimes we do a good job of that, but we also suppress memories that are surrounded and that's connected to that. And I think a lot of times we have to understand that, because I found myself in my older age, like I can remember things. I felt like, why is this cloudy to me? I can remember certain things, but I can't remember other things. But they were normally things that were attached to the memory of the abuse. And because I tried to suppress the abuse, you end up suppressing the other thoughts that come along with that. So when we start to talk about someone who may be living a homosexual lifestyle, they can love God. I don't think that the lifestyle stops you from loving Jesus or whoever your higher power may be. But I don't think it stops that. But I do think that we have to understand in Christianity that those sins God do not like, right? If we're going to go according to the Bible, right? So we have to be able to go back, rewind. He uses the seed. I said we have to be able to go back and uncover, dust off, and deal with what actually happened to us. Because if you can get back to that place, then again, deliverance can start, the healing can start. But sometimes for people, I've talked to people before who are in homosexual lifestyles, and they say, no, I was just born like this. But for me and my belief system, I don't believe that people are born like that. But if that's what they say, then that's their reality. That's their reality, right? So I personally say that you have to go back to the root. Like sometimes you have to go back and question mama and daddy. Because the generation that I grew up in, my parents, that generation was a hush hush generation. And I think I heard someone say that, like, what happens in our household, it stays in our household, right? And so there was a time I remember being in my late 20s, early 30s. I built up the nerve, and it was nerve because my mom, she was born in the 50s, and she was one of those people like, little girl, don't play with me, right? And so I was like, Mom, can we have this conversation? Like, there's some questions that I have. And do you know that she was not open with me? Even if she was 50 years old, going into her 60s, and she still, it was zip. She was hush mouth. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not what happened. And in my mind, I know what happened. I was there. I was a part of this. But for them, they don't want to talk about it. So it's like we have to go back. And sometimes those doors are open for us to have conversations with our parents or people who were there so that we can kind of get our compass, like, find that place where we're able to have this open dialogue. So for me, like, I carry the weight of the sexual abuse all the way into my adulthood. Like, I never told brothers, I never told aunties. There were a few people who were around me who wasn't so close to the situation that I could talk to them about it. But like for my mom, I felt like that would come in and destroy my family, right? I felt like if I was to expose this, like I would be the person who came in and literally tore our family apart. Because now it's like once someone tells you something, you're responsible for what you now know. Correct. And I felt like I would be the superhero and carry all of that. So and I'm saying this for a reason because moving forward into my adulthood, I had these things like, I was promiscuous when I was younger. It was like I had this mindset like I wanted to be in control. Some people have the mindset like, they feel like homosexuality is they say it's like I turned to this because of this. And a lot of times what happened in our past, that is the root issue. As pastors, we have to be able to hold a hand and walk through those difficult conversations, those difficult times, and help them like, okay, let's go back. Sometimes it takes mapping. We got to sit down, we're going to get this paper, and we're going to go back. We're going to go back to when we were younger, because I want you to be able to go back so that you can track to see what happened to you. Because when we get older, it's like now we have this perspective where we are in life. It's like, this is life now. My life is great. This is the decision that I've made. And what happened back there, it's just back there. Not
It doesn't matter.
right. And it doesn't matter, but it does. Your lifestyle decisions, it came from the seeds that were planted in you as a child. So as pastors, we have to sit down, and it's a process a lot of times. And sometimes you never get to the other side of that process because when it starts to hurt, some people back off and they leave. So it's just, that's the place it is being a pastor. Sometimes it's hard.
Absolutely, and much respect. I love your perspective on that. You're absolutely right. I've learned that there are some questions that are not going to be answered, and
Absolutely.
I don't care anymore because I believe I remember asking my dad, what did he do and why did he do it? And I just wanted to have an answer. We were in Miami, and he said to me that never happened. I didn't have to convince him that happened. I knew it happened, but I don't look for answers anymore.
Right.
Because they probably can't tell why they do it. And in my research, and I can call the names and the dates and name the people who I witnessed it. I can say that it was just not one generation. But again, it's like I said on the other show, I would never say the name. I would never tell. I'll take it to my grave because it's like you said, Pastor, you feel like the person, if you say certain things, you will be the cause of the whole demise of the family. And, teary-eyed, I say that is such a heavy burden to carry, and no child needs to carry that. So I've resolved in myself that I don't need answers because most people don't have answers. It's like I think Sasha Ray said, we don't blame our mothers. We don't blame our parents. Who knows what to do in a situation like that? I don't need to have a conversation with them on the why. It's all about the process of healing. And it is because of my faith in God. It's because I know the word. It's because I took the word at what the word says, that I can be delivered. I can be healed. I can walk free. And then I start using the human resources that God put into the earth, like counseling, folks like that, to help me cross the bridge to where I'm at today. Again, this is why I'm so passionate about doing what we do today. And pastors, we can hear and feel the passion you guys have in, more so than I've seen in a lot of ministries. And I haven't gone to a lot of ministry, but the few that I have experienced, I can feel your sincere passion, because truth of the matter is, you guys have a story. So we appreciate your candidacy here today. I am going to, again, ask Sasha Ray to share a little bit about her information, what you want to share, if you want to share anything, and then we'll turn it over to the Vice President to pose another question or take us to our next step.
Sorry. Share information about what I said earlier for the
Yes,
children?
whatever you want to share.
Okay, so I stopped at, I'm writing it down.
And Marie, you can hop in anytime.
Okay, I want to talk about speaking with your child about sexual abuse. The most important message to get across to your child is that abuse is not their fault, because a lot of people, including myself, I always thought it was my fault because I didn't speak up, I didn't tell what was going on. But like he said, I didn't want to let my mother know that her man was capable of doing such a thing. So for me, it was mostly protecting my mother and my brothers, so they didn't have to know, because they liked their dad. For them, it was a father, but for me, it was the monster underneath the bed, so to say. So tell them that you believe them, reassure and support them. Tell them it's not their fault that this happened. Tell them you will try to keep them safe. Let them know that you love them. Let them know that you are glad that they told you. Give them time to talk at their own pace. Make time to spend with your child so they can talk privately. Be open and clear. Allow your child to talk about how they feel. Try to be calm when talking to your child, as they might be confused by any anger, even if the anger is directed elsewhere. Try to understand as much as you can about the effects of child abuse so that you can best support yourself and your child. Convey to your child that they can tell you anything, even when it's hard for them to say or for you to hear, especially that part. Don't blame your child about for what happened. Don't suggest that it would have been better if they had not told anyone, because a lot of people, they encourage their children to keep quiet. Don't talk about it. Don't see a shrink. Stuff like that. Don't tell your child to forget it ever happened, because they won't forget. Don't tell your child not to talk about it. And lastly, don't get upset with your child when he talks about the abuse.
Thank you, Sorcery. I just want to clear up one thing, and then I'll speak about something else. I know I opened the door when I said men, when they are sexually assaulted, one of the questions they ask, am I no gay? And I hope I didn't imply that because they were sexually assaulted, then they're gay, because there's no research to support anything like that. Okay, one question I've been asked in the past multiple times: what do you do when the perpetrator is your pastor? And I've had survivors who refuse to go to church because the perpetrator was their pastor or a member of the church. And my answer was, and will always be, God is not a man, and we cannot judge him by the standards of men. The devil knows his way to church. Because that person is in church, that doesn't say they're a follower of Christ or they're a Christian. And so we have to separate what man does from what God does. So pastors, how do you respond when if that question ever comes to you? The perpetrator is a member of the congregation and the survivor comes to you. And that has happened multiple times. I've known many survivors all over the world who were abused by a member of the clergy or members of the congregation.
Yeah, the more and more research we do, the more and more we realize that that's a common thing, right? We have a lot of people that claim that they won't come back to church because they have church hurts, right? And the reality is that it's not really a church hurt, but it's one individual that is connected to a church, whether it's in passing or they're a member or they're the pastor. It's one individual that has caused the hurt. So when we deal with people that have been abused by whether it's clergy or a member of the church, whatever the case may be, we have to point those individuals back to Christ, because men will be men, women will be women, people will be people. And we cannot hold God accountable for what men do. And we have to know that even though we are clergy, even though we are pastors, at the end of the day, we're also human. And I think for a lot of people, the frustration with pastors comes when their humanity shows. Because people look at pastors and they put them on this real high pedestal, saying that like they are God. But at the end of the day, when they're at the grocery store and some guy runs over, their foot with a cart and refuses to apologize, and now I'm going back and forth with this guy because I'm human and he's actually stepped on my man's side. Now all of a sudden, man, did y'all see Bishop? He was in Walmart acting a fool. And everybody is impacted by what they saw at Walmart, forgetting the fact that I'm still a man. Like I still have problems and issues just like everybody else. Just like God is working on you every day, he's working on me every day. So I still have issues that I'm dealing with. But at the end of the day, I know where my strength lies. And if you know where your strength lies, then you understand my dealings, my situations as a man. So when people go through situations in church, whether it's physical abuse, mental abuse, whatever the case may be, they have to remember that they're still dealing with just a man or a woman. No matter what it is, you're still dealing with just a man or a woman. You can't fault God for what a man or what a woman does. Just my opinion.
So I want to comment on the flip side of this and say, therapy, number one. I'm going to use that word. It's a taboo word in the Christian community. Therapy, right? You say, what do you do? And I think that it's two different spaces, because if it's clergy, if it's a pastor, somebody in leadership, if it's not the head pastor, right, then you need to bring that to the attention of whoever that head pastor is. If it's somebody in if it's somebody in the leadership realm. If it is a head pastor, then you need to also bring that to the attention of someone in leadership. I feel like it has to be addressed, because in church, we're not in the business of just throwing dirt over it. I know you hear a lot of people say you have to protect your pastor. You do have to protect him in a sense, but not that sense, because I feel like this: if you're not careful in that, you open the door for it to continue to happen. It's perpetuated, because you got a full congregation of people that's saying, "Oh no, he's just a man," or she's just a woman. Yes, but you still need to be held accountable for your actions. Who holds the head accountable? You see what I'm saying? So that's why I feel like it has to be brought up. If it's somebody in the congregation, then by all means, I definitely say you need to bring it to the head pastor, bring it to someone that you trust in leadership, and it needs to be addressed. On the flip side of that, whether it's in the clergy or outside of the clergy, I'm going to use the word that's very taboo in the Christian arena, therapy. Get therapy for Christ's sakes. And I think that leadership in churches, we're here for your spiritual help, right? We can help you do this spiritual walk, but some things we are not licensed for. You see what I'm saying? So I'm a believer. We sometimes have to point our congregants, our leadership, and even the pastor, if you need it, point them in the direction of Christian therapists.
Amen.
Someone who has our core beliefs as believers, but also who can help you overcome. Because obviously, if you're in this space doing this, you have some seeds of your own, some roots of your own that needs to be plucked up and things have to be dealt with. You see, so again, being in the Christian arena, it's like it's one of those, it's a balancing act. You see what I'm saying? Because it's like you as having a man or woman of God, like I grew up in that time where it's like I've seen pastors do things that should not have been done, and the whole congregation, they rally around them.
Exactly.
And just like, we're going to protect our man of God because he's just human. I understand that. Now, if you fall sometimes, I get it. But like, what we cannot do is continue to protect a person, and you're creating a monster. You see what I'm saying? Things have to be dealt with, because whatsoever a man sow, that shall he also reap. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. We got to be held accountable for our actions. I'm a believer of that. And I think in the Christian arena, so many things have been covered up under the protection clause, right? That a lot of the pastors, as we can look in the news nowadays, just look around and just see it. Sometimes they get like a God syndrome, being in this place, you can get this God syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I'm above all, no, but we're not above all of it, because like you stated, we are just men and women of the cloth who have submitted ourselves to be servants to the King. Mm-hmm. Like, we're the least of them in this kingdom. Though we may run a church and people come to us and give us all their business, we're just here to serve. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, we have to make sure when you're in a leadership position that you do just that you're serving God's people. And sometimes that's having to sit a head pastor down, right? Sometimes the head pastor need to have a seat to get himself or herself in right relationship with God. They may need therapy for that too. It's hard conversations to have, but I'm a believer in the hard conversations. So
it's so much.
Absolutely. Let me just say this. I don't personally think there's a difference whether they are a pastor, a lay person, or a regular person. The process is still the same. We do lay a heavier burden because I grew up where the pastor was God. It was God and then the pastor. I remember many years praying to God to let my pastor know at the time what was going on. So pastors were God, but I don't think we should treat, because you say you're a pastor, that we should treat you any different if you've abused a child. So my process would be the same. I would definitely have that hard conversation, but I would report it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I know several of the speakers have programs, if they like to give a shout out to their programs and the information that somebody can reach to them.
I'm a sexual assault coach.
Your program that
yes,
you're doing with you. I'm sorry, Marie.
Go ahead, Stephanie, finish what you were saying. You're still speaking.
Yeah. Do you have a program for the youth for your church, pastors?
No, pastors.
You'd like to give a shout to that, the name of it, and how they can reach you?
So we are currently in the process of getting established a youth center. It is called the Misfits Youth Center. We are currently doing mentoring with our Misfits mentoring program, and that's all through our church, which is Project Church out of Lehigh Acres, Florida. We do have a Facebook page. You can also reach us at I believe it's www.myprojectchurch.org. We're still working on the website. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and yeah, that's it.
That's it.
That's all we got.
Bob, you also have an international type of a program that you're doing?
Yeah, so I provide mentorship to therapists, healers, coaches who support survivors of abuse. So one-on-one mentorship for 6 months, basically looking at the deep diving really into ethnic minority abuses, so forced marriage, honor-based abuse, spiritual abuse, dowry abuse, female genital mutilation, and any other kind of harmful practice or abuse that comes within ethnic minorities, as well as how to support ethnic minority communities better. And then I also provide training to professionals, organizations, kind of whoever wants to better their knowledge in those areas so they can better the people in the communities that are around them. The best way to reach me is on Instagram. It's SAB, SAB Against Abuse. Just drop me a message anytime. Even if you don't want to sign up to a program, you just want to have a conversation, you want to learn more, you just want to ask a question, and get an honest and transparent answer. I'm always happy to talk to people.
Thank you. And Sophie, I see that you have books behind you. Do you want to talk about your books?
Yes, but those are romantic suspense. I would like to talk about our book, mine, Veronica, and Marie, and a couple of other co-authors. It's called From Stuck to Limitless, and it's available wherever books are sold. I would like to share just a little piece of the what's it about. Sorry. I don't have any more copies. I sold the last one because these books go fast. But this is the cover. I'm wrong. You don't see it with the green screen. Marie, do you have? Oh, Marie has one. So it's about do you still harbor hurt and pain from past experience? From Stuck to Limitless is an anthology featuring individuals who share their harsh truths about trauma and survival from childhood, sexual and mental abuse, adult traumas, and debilitating health issues. Through such short truth-telling, we learn we are not alone, and it is only by sharing that we can heal ourselves and give hope to others. So there is a content warning. This book, although not graphic, includes essays from individuals who discuss their experience with PTSD, child abuse, and sexual assault. So if you're struggling and you feel stuck, I would encourage you to go to any book vendor and buy yourself a copy. And Marie also has a workbook, so you can write your emotions in it daily. So I hope that helps. And also, I'm a advocate for mental health, but I don't have a site up yet. But I do in May Mental Health Month. So drop by Marie's group. You can, chill with us in the month of May, because the month of May is Mental Health Month. Okay.
And I provide education to healthcare providers on how to care for survivors of sexual assault when they enter our space. And the book Sorcery was talking about is called From Stuck to Limitless. Yes. And if you want to chat with me, it's at chat.marielmckenzie.com. I provide training for healthcare providers on how to care for survivors of sexual assault. Thank you.
Well, mental health is a part of child abuse prevention and awareness as well, because as you know, we have all probably struggled with post-traumatic stress syndrome, anxiety, things of that nature. You know, because of my many years of abuse, I had so much anxiety that I could only go to work a 9 to 5, go to the store once a week, and go to church. Any other change in my life, I couldn't tolerate it. Anxiety is a silent killer. Anyone here on the panel ever experienced anxiety? And if so, can you share at least 1 minute of what that experience looked like? Because that is a part of mental health.
My anxiety does have to deal with speaking. This is out of my element of speaking. So that's why I stutter when I speak, but I'm trying to break through it. I am a survivor of being breaking through the speech.
Yes, you are. Great job. Anybody else? Anxiety or any mental health issues that you're not afraid to share?
So, for years, I've dealt with just it seems like my mind is running all the time because from the age of 14 to 31, I pretty much lived in the streets. So my mind was always moving along the path of what's the next hustle, what's the next thing, what's the next situation. And my mind was always moving. For me, my struggle has been getting my mind to slow down because for me, I'm learning to live an ordinary life, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
I'm learning to share my life with other people because for that period in my life, I didn't expose myself to anybody. So even now in my marriage, I'm learning to share feelings that never would have been shared before. I'm learning to express emotion with my kids that I'd never been taught how to express. So this definitely is a journey for me and a great learning experience.
Absolutely.
I'll just chime in just real quick. So for me, you asked about anxiety. Anxiety is something that I would say I'm learning to control more of. I internalize everything. I'm the one that like hold everything on the inside. So my anxiety doesn't normally show on the outside, but it more so shows when I hold it in. And then sometimes like in my physical body, I start to have issues going on. So anxiety is something that I used to struggle with. I've had a couple anxiety attacks before, like debilitating. I was driving once, had to pull to the side of the road and just call the ambulance because I just could not function at that point. But I also recognized the source of it. And once I recognized the source, I was able to then stop having those anxiety attacks and those things that like bothered me so much. And I was able to more so express it outwardly, find a way to outwardly express it instead of internalize it. So that helped me deal with anxiety.
And a lot of people turn to drugs due to anxiety, and they're not even aware that that's what it is. I remember finding out, realizing what was going on with me because you literally feel crazy. Mm-hmm. Your mind is running 24/7. When you go to bed, your mind is still wide awake. And I remember praying, and I even wrote a chapter in my book called God, All I Want to Do Is Go to Sleep, because I was exhausted from all of that thinking. I would drink a bottle of NyQuil every night, just trying to go to sleep. And it would be 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody there but me, just saying, God, all I want to do is fall asleep. And I never forget God said that you're asking for sleep and I want to give you rest. Mm-hmm. My brain was running 1,000 miles an hour. I struggled in school, even though I have my PhD today, yay, but I still struggled in school because I couldn't line my brain up. It was like everything was just all over the place. But I learned how to meditate. And, we grew up in the church that meditation wasn't of God. That was the quote, new age. But in my opinion, there's no such thing as new age. God has been giving us these tools years ago to meditate. When people say to you, what are you doing today, Veronica? When I say nothing, I mean nothing. Just the mere fact that I can sit down and not think of anything and relax, that was life transforming. So this child abuse, and whether it's sexual child abuse, neglect, or what have you, it has a long reach. So that is why it's so important that we have to recognize these signs early and start the healing process. I read somewhere that it is easier to raise resilient children than try to rebuild adults. I think I got that from you, Marie.
That sounds byline.
But powerful.
Powerful byline, yes. Yeah, I've cared for survivors who, like, the anxiety to them feels like they're having a heart attack. And coming to the hospital, first you have to rule out it's not a heart attack before you conclude that it's anxiety, but it's debilitating.
And how do you explain that, what it feels like? The best way I explained it to a counselor many years ago, or a psychologist many years ago, and like you said, Pastor, counseling and going to a psychologist, that was a taboo in the church. That just deemed you crazy, but I was desperate. And I went to my first psychologist when I went to Job Corps, and I went to Job Corps because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know where to go. I had no place to go. But that was the best decision I ever made because I was able to reintroduce myself. I was able to revamp myself because nobody knew me in North Carolina. I lived at the Asheville house. Most people don't know this, but I lived at a Asheville house, a runaway house, for 2 years. Nobody knows this. Most people don't know that. I said, I think I shared it with you, Stephanie, but most people don't know that I lived in Asheville, North Carolina for 2 years at the Asheville house. And they sent me to counseling. And the only thing that God did, he stared at me and he allowed me to talk. And I was able to get all this stuff out of me to start the process of healing. But it was killing me from the inside out. I looked good on the outside, but I was literally a dead man walking. So if you're listening to my voice, we understand it is a process. You have to talk about it. You have to cry. You have to own your emotions and your feelings. You, sir, you, ma'am, is the most important person in your life. It is about you. When it comes down to forgiveness, you must, if you have to, forgive for selfish reasons. Because oftentimes the perpetrator does not deserve forgiveness in our human form, but we know that God forgives everybody, but the consequences are still there. So if you have to start out forgiving for selfish reasons, do so and start the process. And don't be concerned about people telling your information, because I got to the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I was desperate, and I don't care who tell my business for. If anybody know me, I tell my own business first. Where there is no wood, the fire soon goeth out. Next.
Yes.
I think I'm just going to add my little bit in terms of what anxiety looked like for me. And I was the perfect child, or tried really, really hard to be the perfect child. Um, and I think a lot of that was to not see my mom suffer anymore, not have to have anything to worry about. But I also then became the parent. So I was like her right hand. I raised my sister, and I think by the time I hit my early 20s, I felt my body crumbling under the pressure of holding all of these roles. And I was the person who wouldn't challenge anything. I wouldn't say anything back. I would just do as I was told, when I was told, didn't want any altercations. And when I got to a point where, I guess when I was in this space of speaking with survivors, I found my voice, which was quite ironic. I was there to try and help them do that, and they rather helped me find mine. Um, and I started recognizing something similar to what Bishop said is I was very much just on the go. I never knew when to stop. And at one point, I think I was like working 3 jobs, and I had about 4 or 5 kind of director voluntary like roles going. And then I was caring for my mom, who also has a disability, and I was trying to get my sister through university, and there was all this stuff going on, and I felt like I had to hold the pressure of the world. And I saw the burnout quite quickly. And now, if I do rest, I don't know what to do. It's that bad. Like, resting seems wrong, which is
Mhm.
such a silly thing to say, but um, like I have a little active toddler now who drives me mental, but bless him, when he's with his dad and he's gone out for a bit, I'm sitting there like, I don't know what to do. But then when he's there, I'm like, I need space, I need time for me, but I can't quite find that balance. So it's still a learning curve for me, definitely. But I think just to kind of add a little bit about a question that was raised earlier in terms of forgiveness, I did end up forgiving my father. Many, many years later, I actually got in touch with him when I fell pregnant with my baby because I was afraid that all this hatred that I had will end up boiling into me being a parent. And the funniest thing is when I actually made contact with him after I found him, he turned around and said to me, I forgive you. And I still don't quite understand what he means because I was two and you left me and you hurt me. But still to this day, he will never admit what he did was what he just doesn't actually believe it happened. He's like, no, this is your mom making up stories and etc. etc. But I know it's so true because my body still feels afraid. So when I hear his voice, my body shuts down. And when I hear people shouting or arguing, I go into like the fetal position and I become a little baby. And I know that was because of something. So I very much know he did something wrong. And I know what he did was abuse. But it just baffles me that there are still people out there who are very much kind of it's like he's currently incarcerated, he's in prison for 12 years, um, actually for historical abuse towards other children he had in his life. And he still claims he's innocent, but it just baffles me that there's people out there who still believe that they're so innocent. Um, and then it kind of makes me think, well, obviously it's so hard for a child to come forward and say, I've been abused, when there's people like that who are so good at upholding their image and showing that they're innocent. So, they might seem very amazing and they might sound like a great person, but when a child is telling you something's happened to them, they aren't making that up. That is something that is so true. And it's something that you need to be asking questions about instead of burying it under the carpet.
Mhm.
Wow. You mentioned, thank you for sharing that. With my current husband, he's retired Air Force, and his tone used to trigger that little girl in me. I never told him that, but he read a book and it kind of resonated with him. But even with my marriage that I have now, and I have an amazing husband, but I would feel like that little girl, like you said, when you hear your father's voice, you would have those triggers. Any type of loud noise would trigger that. Certain smells would trigger that. Like I said, you're going to have these triggers for the rest of your life. You never get over it. You just get through it in the sense of, like I said, not as a victim, not hanging on by the thread, but developing the tools and the resources to rewrite the narrative of your mind. And you have to say these things out loud. If you get a negative thought in your mind, you have to say, not today. I am fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. I am beautiful, girl. You are smart, intelligent. I'm talking to myself all the time. And when you hear me say it is what it is, I'm not having a long dialogue with that negative conversation in my head. I cut it off at the head. It is what it is. I am fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. I think we have, like I heard a pastor say, don't nurse it and don't rehearse it. We have to speak truth in our lives. You will still have these triggers. So what you said about your father, and how do you remember these things at 2 years old? Because people are surprised when I say I can remember exactly what went on at the age of 5. But this memory bank doesn't change. You can remember this stuff.
Mhm.
Yes, you do. And thank you, Veronica, for mentioning the positive affirmations because we're good at the negative self-talk. The same way we can speak negative to ourselves, we can replace it with the positive self-talk. Powerful.
Absolutely.
Powerful.
As we're getting ready to close, does anyone have last statements that they would like to say?
I'd like to thank you all for investing your time, and for pushing through your own emotional barriers to be able to share with other people. The most powerful thing that we have as people, as human beings, is the word of our testimony. And what gives that so much power is that there are people living in dark places and spaces in their hearts and minds. And it's not until they see the light of your testimony that they're able to walk out of the darkness that they have been trapped in. So I thank you all for just being able to share that with all of us, because where you are, no matter how damaged, no matter how broken you have been, where you are right now is a light to someone else that is hiding in the place and space in which you have come out of. And there is a great need for individuals like you all to stand up, to step up, and to lead those that are in captivity free.
Yeah.
They need what you have. So no matter how many tears you cry, no matter how broken you may feel, no matter whatever experience you've gone through, somebody somewhere needs what you have. Remember that. That is your power. That is your strength. That is what makes you invaluable, not just to this world or to this social construct, but also to the kingdom of God,
Amen.
whether you realize it or not.
Thank you, pastors. And we need more pastors like you who will face this topic head on. I know child abuse, sexual abuse makes a lot of people uncomfortable and they don't want to talk about it. Well, we're not here for comfort. So buckle up and listen. Let's not wait for another tragic headline. Children are being murdered, abused, sexually, physically. And it happens more than we know. As I said earlier, when I mentioned the statistics, it's only about reported cases. There are many more children globally who are suffering in silence, unseen, and unheard. So let's get educated, let's get mad, and engage and supporting programs that work on awareness and prevention. So we don't have to see another child abused or get killed. So thank you all for being here and thank you for this conversation. It's amazing. We need to keep the conversation going. Yes.
As we close, remember that prevention begins with awareness and healing begins with truth. Together, we can create spaces for children, survivors, and families. Thank you again to our speakers and to everyone who joined us today.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is
Thank
amazing.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
if you're listening and you need help,
Thank you.
here's a national hotline, children's hotline, 1-800-422-4453. Thank you. I'm stopping the recording.